Hey everybody, Scoutcrafter here again. Today it's midweek Wednesday, and if you remember my last video, I asked you what this insignia was on my truck, and some of you got it right, but some of you thought it was the Appalachian Trail insignia, which is very close, but it looks just a little bit different. This insignia is the G.I. Joe Adventure Team, and this hat and a couple other things my friend Ramel from RJ Cruisers, he does some t-shirts, things like that. He made this up for me about a year ago, and let me tell you a little bit about some of the most amazing marketing strategy ever conceived. Now, let's go back to 1964. G.I. Joe is introduced by Hasbro. It's the most popular toy in many decades, and that really took off. But unfortunately, soon after, the Vietnam War was taking a toll on all war toys, so that executives at Hasbro had to come up with a new idea. And what they did, they made over the G.I. Joe figures, and they made them over into Adventure Team. And they even made over the vehicles. Instead of olive drab, they painted them all yellow, and they were true adventure vehicles. And this way, the boys could have a ton of fun, and to spur on their adventure, they had this great box art that would give you some ideas of what you could do with these vehicles and with these different accessories that went along with the G.I. Joe team, the adventure team. So that went on, and it was really wildly successful, and that's why when it came time and I was buying my vehicle, the color of the vehicle was yellow. So I said, well, I had to be part of the adventure team. Okay, we're back in the shop. I have something really quick to show you, and I know most of you, if not all of you, have seen this before, but I bet you won't remember when you saw it. So I'm going to show it to you now, and at the end of the video, I will show you a picture of where you've seen this before. So let's go check it out. Okay, I brought this down to clean up today. I have to oil the sheath because it's getting just a little bit dry, but it's in beautiful shape. You never see them in this kind of shape. And what this is, it's a World War I machete. And you can see here that it's stamped France. It's made, you can see right there, made in France. So what's interesting about this type machete, again, it uses that World War I clasp, you know, not a button clasp. And when you remove the machete from there, it has a little metal, like a copper or brass plating in there. I don't know if you could see it. See that? Yeah. And that stops the blade from hitting any of the threads. Otherwise, you'd have to have rivets along here to protect the threads from cutting through. But you've seen this before. I'm sure most of you have. And it's just this one's a beautiful. Now I did a video on World War I machete that a friend of mine came across, wanted me to refurbish, and I had to look it up and found out what it is. But the thickness of it, the way the handle is formed with these punch over rivets, it's really phenomenal. But I just came down here to clean it up. Try and put on your thinking caps. Think, when was the last time, if ever, you saw one of these before, because the shape is very distinctive, and you've seen it before, but you probably won't remember at the end of the video. Okay, next up, one of the first things I did when I first got my lathe is I'd like to just, you put anything in the lathe, wood lathe, metal lathe, because you just want to play with it. It's such a fun tool. And one of the fun things I used to like to make were spin tops. And I used to do it for the scouts and stuff because we would have contests. I would always try and keep them busy with some kind of contest. And I'll show you what kind of contest we used to have. Even before I got a lathe, a lot of times what I would do is I would just take a block of wood and a dowel and put it in and try and make some kind of spin top and see how long we can get these to run. Later on, when I got a wood lathe, I would put some different types of material in there to try and give it less friction to get a better spin on it and whatnot. But again, it's a wood lathe, and wood has a, it's always in balance more or less. But then what I did was I came across these wooden wheels. You've seen these before. You can buy them very cheaply, and they're made for like wooden truck vehicles, and you can get them by, you can buy them by 10, 20, 100. Well, I found a way that what I started to do was I figured out how far the rod has to come out to make the spin top work the best, to give it a nice spin and to make it last a long time. But what I did was I would turn a little bit on the metal lathe, and then I would knurl the top here and make these out of those wooden wheels. and you could see, you could spin them, and they would go for quite a while, you know. And here's the best part. Now, to get the contest going with the scouts, what I would do is I would bring these down and give each scout his own top. I would go down with a bunch of different models and let them pick out what they wanted. Some tops had, you know, a very short stem coming out. Some had an extra long stem. Some had a hardened tip. Some had a brass tip. Some had these little rubber, it's like a big rubber washer around it to see how they would spin differently. Because every one would have its own personality, more or less, on how it would spin. So I would bring these down and let them fool around and see which one they wanted to take home. The contest was pretty ingenious. What I would do, it's not how long the top would spin. I would let them take a top, pick the one they wanted, practice with it at home for a week or two, and then they would come here and write on a piece of paper how long they thought their top would spin. Then they would just give it a spin, and we'd start the stopwatch. And for every second under or over, they would deduct it a point. And that's how we could tell who won. So even if you had a top that only spun for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, if you guessed it correctly, you would win. So, and also, you know, how long, what kind of duration of a spin you gave it. So it was a lot of fun, and the kids had a great time. Now, about 15 years ago, I'm working in the bus company in the shop. And I used to pick up whatever metal I could because, you know, metal's hard to come by. And these were bushings that they used to hold the rear stabilizer on the bush. These are heavy, super heavy, nice steel. But when they got, like, they would throw these out because they're used and they're putting new ones in. And what I would do is I would take it and I would go over and skim off the top and make a nice piece of steel. You know, this was good, heavy metal. I wanted to make a top out of one of these. So in my spare time, and this is why we're doing this today, I found these upstairs and I thought it'd be pretty fun to look at. I would make the, and look, there's a Scout Crafter Red even before I became Scout Crafter. But you can see it's kind of crude and rudimentary, but I made these tops, and I did it on the lathe, and here's another one you can see. And what was really interesting, this one here was the Champion. And I got these so precision on the lathe that they'll spin for, this one was 15 minutes. And let me show you how they work. Basically, to get it up to speed, because you got to get the speed going for these, I took a piece of PVC like this, and what I would do is I made a little hole in the shaft here. You can see that hole? And I would pass it through a hole in the shaft here, and then I would wind a little piece of shoelace around here, and then give it a spin, pulling it out, and then when it was spinning, I would lift this up, just like the old-fashioned wood tops used to be. Now, the first thing you'd want to do is you want to level out the surface so you can get a pretty level both ways. So this way your spin top isn't going all over the place, you know. But a lot of times they'll use like a convex or concave, rather, bowl and or dish, and that will keep it centered. Now here we wrapped up, you see the cord around here. Now we would use dental floss, things like that, to get more wraps out, but I'm just giving you a quick example of how this would work. And pull that out and spin it like this, and you can see, because this is so precision, and this one's not even the real good one, but after it settles in for a while, this thing will spin and spin, and it's just a delight, you know. And we used to take bets, you know, in the lunchroom. We'd be sitting there watching these things and how close we can get to the exact time, you know, 12 minutes and 20 seconds or whatever, depending on the spin. And it's a lot of fun. But let me show you the other one now, the Champion. And you can see how precision that is. Now, the funny thing is I haven't spun this in many years, so I don't even know how it's going to take off so well. But this is the big one. Okay. Now, you can see here. Now, normally that spins a little bit wild, but it will settle down. Eventually, that will get down to the center, and then it will it'll kind of settle into a spot. Now it's starting to settle. Believe it or not, it's been about 4 minutes that this thing's been spinning to get down to the size. But you can see, because it's not level here, it's kind of finding its you know, it's I have to lift off the corner or something like that. But I'm trying to center it here so you can see it. But what would be great is we would have this thing spinning, and some of the guys would walk into the lunchroom, and they would say, "What are you looking at?" And they had no idea that it was spinning. You know, it was so solid, so straight, and oh, this is just a joy to watch. You know, especially when it starts to get really slow. See, now I'm just we're getting real close to the, you know, where it's getting centered out. But what would be really fun is when it starts to get slow, and you think, oh, any second now, but it keeps going for minute after minute. Okay, this is about 2 minutes later, and you can see now it's pretty much in the same spot, even though I'm holding up the corner of the plate to try and level it out. But this is, I don't even know how long this is going to spin. I didn't give it a really good time. It's been another 3 minutes. It's still going. I should have timed this. I wish I had a stopwatch. I would have timed this one. This is a good run. But now you can see it's such a precision instrument here, and when it's spinning on something hard like this tile, it really doesn't have much friction. Okay, another 2 minutes and 15 seconds have passed by, and I tell you the truth, it doesn't seem like it's slowing down much, but I will come back when it does get to the point. See, I'm just raising and lowering the edges here to keep it centered, but I will come back when it gets wobbly. Okay, you can see now we're starting to get a little bit of the RPMs are slowing down to the point where it's going to drop. Any second now. Any second. Well, I guess you get the point. Okay, I'm definitely going to have to edit that last segment down. That thing went close to 15 minutes. And, you know, I was trying to get little bits and parts of it, but it kept going and going. It's like the Energizer Rabbit. Okay, let's see what else we got. Remember, in the springtime, I bought some crickets at Petco because we didn't have any crickets here in a long time, so I wanted to restock them, and I released them in the backyard, and they did really well. Listen to it now, what it sounds like in my backyard. It's going to be a little dark, so you'll be able to hear it. Isn't that awesome? Okay, now one last thing. On this Saturday, the 28th of September, we're going to be meeting up at the Kent Machinery Show in Kent, Connecticut. I'll have a little link in the description and also a photo after this. And we're going to meet at the Windmill at 11 o'clock in the morning. So if you're anywhere in the area, it's definitely worth going, and it's a wonderful show. I did a video on it, a two-part video, if you want to see what it's like before you go. But really worth the trip, and hope to see you there. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Take care now. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Now, if you're wondering where you saw that machete from, it was from the movie Jaws. That was Captain Quint's machete.